Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll wait a few moments and allow people time to log in and join us. We're so glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. We're just waiting for everyone to join us before we get started. Welcome, welcome. Okay, we are going to officially get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hawk Mountain Sanctuary's Stay at Home Speaker Series. Today's program is the Peregrine Falcon in Pennsylvania, a Raptor success story with Bert Myers, Director of Environmental Education with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Welcome, Bert.
Thank you, Jamie. It's a pleasure to be here tonight.
My name is Jamie Dawson, and I'm the Director of Education at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. Thank you so much to everyone who is joining us today in the audience. We really appreciate it. And as you may know, Hawk Mountain is the world's very first refuge for birds of prey. And we continue to work hard to be leaders in raptor conservation, science, and education, locally and globally around the world. Hawk Mountain is a private nonprofit, and membership is the lifeblood of our organization. To all of our members, thank you so very much for your continued support. And if you're joining us today and you're not a member, we hope you consider becoming one in the future. Hawk Mountain also hopes that everyone remains safe and healthy during these challenging times. And we are so excited that we're able to provide free virtual programming to our local and global community. As always, Hawk Mountain greatly appreciates and depends on donations. Just so everyone is aware, today's program is being recorded. The video will then be accessible on Hawk Mountain's YouTube channel as a continued resource. We also have a link on our website directly connecting you to our YouTube channel. And at any point during today's program, viewers may submit questions through the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform. We've designated time at the end of the program to take some questions from the audience. And I am thrilled that Bert Myers is joining us today to share with us the amazing success story of the Peregrine Falcon in Pennsylvania. And before we go further, I'd like to take a moment to share some of Bert's background experience with our audience. Bert Myers is the current Director of Environmental Education with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Prior to this position, Bert was the Environmental Education Specialist for the Pennsylvania Game Commission, assigned to the Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area. Bert began his career as an environmental interpretive technician with the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, State Parks, first assigned to Colonel-Denning State Park, and later as an environmental education specialist assigned to Clifford Pinchot State Park. He is a graduate of Valley Forge Military College, the University of Pittsburgh, and Colorado State University. Married, Bert's family consists of his wife, Anne, and his children, Sarah, Lewis, and Emily. So Bert, what inspired you to pursue a career in the field of environmental education?
Well, Jamie, I first got my teaching certificate and was looking to teach in the more typical public school setting and maybe do some coaching. And I was doing that, but I was having trouble getting a full-time position. So I explored some options and ended up getting hired as a seasonal environmental interpretive technician with DCNR at Colonel-Denning State Park. And after my first season, I realized, what an awesome classroom. I've always been an outdoors person. I was lucky to have a mom and dad that, well, my era made you go outside. We weren't allowed inside during the summer. But then you ever transform that into an education career. And I owe a lot of credit to the first park manager I worked for. His name was Ken Boyles. Ken said to me at the end of the season, he goes, I think you've got a future in this. I was like, wow, this could be a really awesome career. And I've had a great career. So it's been a real pleasure, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Well, thank you so much. And you've gotten to work in such beautiful places. You're very lucky. And
that's for sure.
I think we can all agree it's pretty cool when you get to say, hey, I work with Peregrine Falcons, right?
That's true.
That's true. Not many people can say that. So Bert, what is the most favorite thing for you about being able to work with Peregrine Falcons?
I think it's the fledging period when you see one of the fledglings complete its first successful flight. And it's also a sigh of relief because in the urban environment, there's a lot of dangerous things in downtown Harrisburg. So once they start mastering flight, and then you can progressively see these birds improve, and it's in days. It's not weeks, it's days, because as you know, their period before they disperse isn't very long. So it's get it together or else. But it's really I think that's my highlight.
Gosh, amazing, amazing. All right, Bert, I think everyone's excited to learn more about what you have to share about the Peregrines. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I entitled this presentation Peregrine Falcons, Restoration and Recovery in Pennsylvania. But I'm going to go into some more detail on the specifics to the Rachel Carson State Office building where the Peregrine Falcon nest is in downtown Harrisburg and its relationship to DEP and DCNR. So I like to start at the beginning. I'm sure there's plenty of avid birders out there. Hawk Mountain does such great work, not only in Pennsylvania, but nationally and internationally, educating and providing research on this classification of raptors. So the falcons, they're classified with the hawks, both the accipiters, like you see on the left, or the bootios, like you see on the right, the very familiar red-tailed hawk. So some of the facts about peregrine falcons: Falco peregrinus means wandering falcon, and peregrine falcons are considered the fastest bird on the planet, and National Geographic recorded them at 242 miles an hour. Typically, the adult falcons have a body length of 15 to 20 inches and a wingspan from 38 to 46. They weigh between 1.5 to 2.5 pounds. If you want to see an example of sexual dimorphism, that is how you can determine male from female, in peregrine falcons, it's in size, and in all birds of prey. And so the females, and it's true in our case, 48 EE is a significantly bigger bird than our dominant male, which is 85 AK right now. So they're about 30 to 50% larger in size. Some additional facts: they have the easily identified crown and nape black. Black wedge extends below the eye. I like to refer that to as the Elvis sideburn, and it forms a helmet. There are 3 species of falcons found in Pennsylvania: the merlin on the left, the American kestrel in the middle, and the peregrine falcon. I was sharing with Jamie before the program that that picture on the left by Miracles, I actually took that photo at Hog Island while I was participating in the Audubon's Educator Week outside of Matamoros Bay, Maine. And that was just an awesome trip. But let's get back to the peregrine falcon. In terms of history, there was 2 things that conspired, among other environmental hazards, that directly impacted the population of peregrine falcons nationally and across the Commonwealth. And that is direct persecution. As the history of Hawk Mountain demonstrates, there was a need to set up protection and a place of protection for the birds of prey, because at one time they were not protected by law, which of course they are fully protected by the Game Code today and also by the Migratory Bird Act. But in addition, as many of you know, the DDT era, as we see on the right, was a key factor in the decline and near disappearance of peregrine falcons across the United States. So with the banning of DDT, and I'll get into some of those details now. First, in 1970, the Fish and Wildlife Service placed peregrine falcons on the endangered species list, and 2 years later, DDT was officially banned in the United States. As many as you are probably aware, it's still used in other parts of the world, but it's prohibited from being used in the United States. So from 1975 to 1992 was when the initial effort to bring back peregrine falcons, and there was 1,000 birds reintroduced throughout the East. They attempted to start with historic natural cliff sites, but predation by great horned owls really impacted the population, and that just wasn't working very well. So they moved the peregrine falcon release sites to coastal areas and cities. And of course, urban areas such as the Rachel Carson State Office Building does a very good job in mimicking the features of a cliff. It's got the high air, the high perch and protection from other predators. So the reintroduction and restoration was successful, and peregrine falcons, believe it or not, they were removed by the federal endangered species list in 1999, and the state list officially last year when they were no longer considered threatened. So let me introduce you to the Rachel Carson building a little bit. This is 400 Market Street, downtown Harrisburg. My office is on the first floor, and my secondary office, you could say, is on the 15th floor at the ledge where you see that arrow pointing on the photo on the left. And some pictures taken of the peregrine falcons while they're in downtown Harrisburg. You can see that they're just remarkably acrobatic. And here you can really see those markings on their head, that helmet shape, the sideburns, in addition to that streamlined body and the wide, narrow wings. They were just awesome and remarkable flyers. So that nest began with one peregrine being spotted in downtown Harrisburg in 1996. So there was a nest box placed by the Game Commission in cooperation with DEP and DCNR on the 15th floor ledge to establish a breeding pair on the Rachel Carson State Office Building. Unknown at the time, the female that was captured to be used for breeding was a hybrid female and therefore was unable to reproduce. So a new female arrived and she was banded 4x4. And by the year 2000 was the first successful year of peregrine falcons nesting in downtown Harrisburg on the Rachel Carson State Office Building. So you see some good photos from the early days. And then here is in 1999, it was determined that the original female was infertile, as I mentioned. And amazingly, within 2 weeks, the male returned with a new female that was the one that was banded 4-4. So from 2000 to 2004, this pair nested successfully. Unfortunately, in 2004, there was an accident and the peregrine falcon, the male, the dominant male, was injured along the Harrisburg rail trail or rail line. And in 2005, a new male, WV, that's his photo on the right, arrived exhibiting courtship behaviors, and the pair successfully fledged 3 young. And continuing that timeline, in 2010, a new unbanded female arrived and began bonding with the male. Whatever happened to 4x4 was never determined. And that's, to my knowledge, the only time that's happened with one of the adults. And then in 2012, the female had an eye injury that incapacitated her. And amazingly, again, in early June, a new female, banded 4080E, was observed pair bonding. And that is the resident female that is with us as of today. So from 2013 to 2020, the resident adults, again, 48AE, and the male, WV, successfully nested for 7 years until last year, the year before last. And unfortunately, this longtime male, this dominant male, WV, he was quite a bird. He lived for 18 years. If you look at most bird guides, they quote 16 years as a long life, top end of the lifespan. And here we are, an 18-year-older. Began breeding a year earlier than most adult males, at 2. And during his lifetime, 54 young successfully fledged. And there are 6 offspring that nested that we know of, and producing 160 grandchildren, with 3 great-grandchildren, I should say, occupying known nesting sites today. So that's pretty amazing. Unfortunately, WV didn't survive the challenge that was last year between the current male and WV. He was pretty injured, and I tried to rescue him. And unfortunately, he still could fly. And trying to catch an adult falcon on a 15th floor ledge that can fly is pretty difficult. So I tried my best, and the next day, unfortunately, it had flown into a building on Chestnut Street in Harrisburg. Fortunately for us, the workers there saw it right away and contacted the Game Commission, and the game warden for that district came out really quickly and recovered the bird. And we were able to fortunately have it mounted. And someday when the Rachel Carson State Office Building opens to the public again and our Environmental Education Center is open, you could stop by and see the mount and pay tribute to WV yourself, because he was just an amazing bird. So this is the new male, and he's banded 85 AK. And because of banding, this was really an important aspect of research on birds. Birds have been banded longer than any other wildlife that have been researched in history. So because of the bands, we were able to determine it was hatched in the Transamerica building, which is in downtown Baltimore, Maryland, in 2017. It was one of four siblings whose mother, 09AR, also came from Pennsylvania. And last year was his first year breeding at the Rachel Carson State Office building, and he's back again this year. That's one of his favorite spots, right at the corner. If you get on the Falcon Cam and you look at the far right camera and choose that angle, you'll find him there often and often eating his breakfast. So they do eat birds. So you might see him with a grackle or maybe a rock dove. So I want to give you an update. This is going on right now. So if you've never been on the Pennsylvania Falcon Cam, I'll be sharing that information as we go further. But as of dark today, we had 2 eggs. I anticipate another one tomorrow. The first egg was laid this past Sunday, and that was the earliest by 2 days of an egg arriving in the history of the Rachel Carson State Office building. And we do anticipate another 2, could be as many as 5, but I'm thinking 2, and we'll see how accurate I am. But these are happening right now. That means we're going to have a hatch sometime in early April, and fledging will probably start taking place at the end of May. So this is the basic seasonal calendar for the birds at the Rachel Carson building. We have the nesting season basically is completed. The eggs have arrived. The hatchlings will begin to develop after hatching. In May, we'll be doing the banding event in which we collaborate with the Game Commission and we band the eyases. I'll talk about that a little more as I will the Falcon Watch and Rescue, which takes place probably end of May, early June this year. During July, you see the fledglings and their flight skills improve, as I referenced earlier. And then in August, the young falcons really begin extending their flights. And by September, they're gone. They disperse and they head throughout the mid-Atlantic. And by October, January, they can be winter wanderers. The female 48, she tends to hang around the ledge in downtown Harrisburg, but WV, he split during the winter. 80s, the current dominant male, he tends to also leave for brief periods. So the nest, typically 3 to 5 eggs, as I mentioned. Incubation and care is divided between male and female. The ice is shed down feathers and are flying within 40 to 45 days of age, which is amazing. And they do migrate, again, the name, wandering falcon. And the juveniles, after they reach maturity, they do not return to the ledge. Okay, so as I mentioned, they are biparental. That means both parents tend to the young. It's a common form of parenting for monogamous birds. And so the male's role, 85 AK, is bringing prey to the nest and feeding the female. And also they will strip it and start feeding it to the young once they hatch. The female's role is she does the majority of the incubating. They do switch at times, but 480, she's been at this a long time at this point, and she tends to do most of that incubating. So I wanted to give you a comparison here of also a man-made or human-made nest site on the left, and then what the natural site looks like on the right. So they mimic each other pretty well. And historically, they nested on steep cliff sides, typically under an overhang. That still occurs in Pennsylvania. Today, most falcons do nest on human-made structures, such as skyscrapers and bridges. And the female digs the shallow depression, does that prior to the arrival of eggs. And you can also note that they don't add any kind of material to the nest. So before the breeding season, I get the scenic view of Harrisburg, and I get the nest box ready for the nesting season, putting in some clean gravel for the box and clean off all the cameras. You can see one of the cameras above my head. There's 3 others. And then I get it back in the window before the falcons decide to show up. The cliffside, that's another story. And the Game Commission, you see Dan Browning on the left, he just retired. He was head of their non-game bird section for many years, published author. You see him scaling the cliff, getting down to a nest site. And then you see them actually getting to the nest site to band the birds, because that's, again, the backbone of bird research. And then I like to share with young people, you want to be a wildlife biologist? do you have a fear of heights? Because that is pretty impressive, and that's about halfway down. There's also some urban sites that have their challenges. This is the Walt Whitman Bridge. You can see the upper right corner of the bridge. There's a falcon, and they have particular challenges there. When the birds are fledging, watch and rescue is done by kayak. And so they actually have volunteers that will kayak under the bridge and try and recover the young falcons if that first flight doesn't go well. And then closer to home, closer to where I live and work, is the Route 30 bridge, which is between York and Lancaster counties. There is a longtime nest site there at this location. And originally, the biologists climbed across the spans tied to the bridge, which was a little scary. And then they were able to get some help with this pontoon boat that has a lift on it, and that made it much easier. So you can see that you have to go to a bit of extremes to ban some of these nest sites. So the falcon, again, happens in May. It's used for identification and research purposes. The Game Commission, the biologists, they handle the birds. That gentleman on the left, that's Dr. Art McMorris, a great guy, phenomenal Peregrine Falcon person, and he just retired, so I have to give him a lot of credit. And on the right, some of you may recognize DCNR Secretary Cindy Adams Dunn, who is a real bird fancier and bird watcher. So we did this during the last live event we could do before COVID, doing the banding events. We'll be doing a banding event. We hope to share it online this year. We still have some restrictions with COVID, but it looks like this year we're going to hopefully be able to, DEP will put out a release, and we'll do this on social media, and we'll do it on our website. So that would be in May. The watch and rescue takes place in late May, and this is where I'm calling for volunteers. If you're a birder or really interested in birds of prey, live close to Harrisburg, or willing to make that drive, we organized a cadre of volunteers that watch the fledglings when they first make their flights. And as I mentioned, these flights can be unsuccessful, and we sometimes have to rescue the birds and get them out of harm's way. And we monitor the ledge from dusk till dawn, or I should actually say dawn till dusk. And then danger awaits fledgling on early flights because of traffic on Market Street. One year we had a fledgling that tried to fly into the entrance of the Strawberry Square Mall. That didn't go very well, but we were able to successfully save both of those birds, rescue them. And then normally what I do is I'll take them up to the top of the Rachel Carson State Office building or the 15th floor ledge, and I'll release them. And the adults find them very quickly. So this is what the banding event looks like. There's Dr. McMorris out on the ledge. You can see in the far picture, he is collecting the irises, and we'll take him inside very briefly. We band one on the ledge to keep the adults satisfied, and then take the other remaining birds in and band them inside, and then we'll do some switching so we can weigh all the irises, and also check and give them a health check, dust them for mice if that needs to happen, which it usually does, and then quickly return them to the nest. No harm, no foul. But you can see the adults are very aggressive. They will fly very close to you. We tend to use a person behind the individual on the ledge that has a broom extended over their head, and the falcons will tend to go after that instead of the person. At least that's the plan. But I've been out there and releasing birds, and they can get awful close. You definitely have your head on a swivel. But again, some of this banding up close, I cheated a little bit on that picture on the left. That's actually banding of an American kestrel, but it's the same principle as you see on the right. And this banding allows them to identify specific birds. The Game Commission is good enough that they put some extra bands on the birds at the Rachel Carson building, usually a red-green combination or color combination, yellow, blue, that allows us to identify the individual fledglings. So then we can document which fledglings have been able to accomplish safe flight and which ones still need some practice, and ones we especially have to keep an eye on. So this is what Falcon Watch and Rescue looks like. That's Renee Larry on the left. She's a dedicated volunteer, and we're very gentle with the birds. Most of the time they are uninjured, and we're able to take them right back to the top of the building. Other times there has been some minor injuries since I've been on the watch, and we go up to a rehabilitator in northeast of Harrisburg, and Patty does a really great job. Usually, for example, we had one that's sort of a late bloomer, and it just never really did fill out. That bird ended up as a classroom bird, but it would not have survived in the wild. It was just completely underdeveloped. But most of the time, the birds that do go to the rehabbers are back within 24 hours. So if you're not familiar with the Falcon Cam, it's right at your fingertips. So there's a live video streaming from the ledge to the world, and it's amazing. We get people that tune in from Japan, India, Great Britain is very big, Germany, Norway, South America, Brazil, Chile. It's amazing. And of course, across the United States and Canada as well. But you can view behavior and development and the calls and the alarm and feeding all in real time. And the spring is when it gets interesting, especially when the eggs hatch and the little fuzzies come out. And you can see that real transition, how quickly it happens where they lose the down and they start bringing in their adult flight feathers. There's the web address, the fancy one, but if you just Google DEP Falcon, the cam will come up. We also provide website postings that are updated year round. We do what's called Falcon Wire, and I am the supposedly unknown author of those updates. We also use Twitter, and we have some YouTube videos as well. So I think it's a remarkable connection that the most prolific site in terms of production in Pennsylvania is the nest site at the Rachel Carson State Office Building, just so appropriately named after Pennsylvania's own iconic author, Silent Spring. I think we're all aware of the story of how her work drew attention to the problem of the use of DDT throughout the United States and its impact it was having on the environment. And ironically enough, there's been residents nesting on the 15th floor since '96 and breeding since 2001. And as of last year, 79 eggs have hatched with the highest fitness rate, as I said, of any site within the state. And offspring have been spotted nesting across the eastern ports of the United States, and we have documented that they are nesting in Baltimore, again on the Trans-America building in downtown Delaware. They were a couple days ahead of us this year as far as having an egg arrival, and Cleveland, Ohio. There's another nest site in Pennsylvania. If you get out to the western end, my alma mater, the University of Pittsburgh, has peregrine falcons nesting on the Cathedral of Learning. So more to the Carson connection. I just think it's a great testimony to her name that something is really a success story in terms of wildlife, at seeing the peregrine falcon return to Pennsylvania the way it has. Their current population is above what it was when before DDT was being introduced. So it's pretty fitting that a once gone raptor, or one species that was nearly eliminated, is now nesting in a building named after her. So I just take a minute, enjoy some of these photos. Most of these photos were supplied by Joe Kosak. He recently retired from the Game Commission as well. He was the editor of the Game News, also a photographer, did a lot of work in the field, and Joe is a really good guy. Wish him the best in retirement, but his photos here are really pretty awesome. Also has some photos here in some more natural settings. That photo on the right was actually WV. That was the former dominant male. On the left, I snuck that in. It's from my days at Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area. That's that they do see peregrine falcons at that location as well. And on the right was another picture of WV on the corner. So I thought we could think about a little comment of quotation from Rachel Carson. And that is, one way to open your eyes is to ask yourself, what if I'd never seen this before? What if I knew I'd never see it again? So I think that speaks to appreciating the awesome displays that we get to witness of wildlife in Pennsylvania, of peregrine falcons to the recovery of bald eagles, the return of the osprey to Pennsylvania, and other success stories such as um, the, the rebound of wood duck populations across the Commonwealth, across the country. And these are all success stories. And I think environmental education, with all the challenges that face us today, that it's very important that we remind students and young people and the public and everybody that there are success stories. We have seen species recover, but we still have plenty of challenges facing us in future years. But I can tell you that right now, the birds at the Rachel Carson State Office Building, the Peregrine Falcons, seem to be doing very well. Second year this pair has been together, and I look forward to having a successful hatch and a successful fledging and contribute to the continued rebound in population of peregrine falcons throughout the United States. So, Jamie, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, and what an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. And I loved your perspective that you shared at the end about the importance of sharing these stories of hope. It is so important. You can make a positive difference. So yes. Okay,
Thank you.
yes, thank you. We had some really great questions start to come in during your presentation, and everyone in the audience, now's your chance. Okay, first question. You had mentioned that when the peregrine falcons were being reintroduced, there were about 1,000 that were reintroduced. And the question is, where did they come from? And actually, how were they brought here to the US, or how were they reintroduced?
That's a very good question. Some birds were live trapped. A lot of birds were actually from falconers that had been raised, and that brought in the issue that was not first anticipated, and that is when you get a hybrid, they're not fertile. And so that's one of the issues that early on in the Rachel Carson State Office Building we had issues with. That first female was a hybrid. And there's also some birds that were raised by, I guess memory serves, it was the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service raised them in incubation from eggs. So it was a mixture of the three.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. And, you
Yep.
know, about hybrids, and we do have several questions about hybrids. So I'm going to kind of combine those questions and ask you to kind of elaborate on that.
Okay.
So there are questions just saying like, what is a hybrid bird? And then also, are they present in any species, or there's curiosity. People want to know more about what the hybrid is.
Okay, my memory might fail me right now, but there are different subspecies of peregrine falcons found across the United States. And so those birds that were owned and bred for falconers, they could be mixes between different subspecies, and therefore that hybrid, that cross of those two, they're not fertile. They just aren't. It's a byproduct of that breeding. So that's how they become a hybrid. That's how it happened.
Thank you. Thank you for elaborating on that.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is, when does the juvenile plumage change to adult? Because we did see.
Well, it's quickly. Yeah. So if you think in terms of fledging taking place in the end of May, and here we are, we have eggs in the ground in March. It's going to take the eggs 35 days approximately to hatch. So you do the math, and we're talking about, okay, so 35 days, that's going to put us like early April or so. Then they're going to hatch. But between that hatch period and the end of the month, or I'm sorry, the end of the following month, that 2-month period, they have to have their flight feathers. And so it happens within that span of about 6 to 7 weeks that you'll see the eventual dropping and the loss of the down. And it's pretty a pretty dramatic sequence to watch yourself. So that's another good reason to turn into the Falcon Cam and start watching from now through the fledging period, and you will see quite a change.
In my opinion, one of the best reality TV shows out there, Falcon. You don't want to miss it.
Right.
So the next question is, how does the naming scheme for the Falcons work? And I assume they're referring to the bands.
Yes. So when you're issued the bands as a biologist, and I was fortunate enough in my game commission career to take advantage of a lot of field opportunities to do just that. So I'm just saying this in terms of having been there, banding ducks, tundra swans, Canada geese, kestrels, barn owls, wild turkeys. That's an interesting assignment. But you get issued specific bands, and these bands are specific size based on the species and sex. So a band for a male peregrine falcon is smaller than the band for a female peregrine falcon because they're 30% larger. And you want to have a snug fit, but not too snug, so it'll stay on and it doesn't bother the bird. So when the biologists, when they're issued, the Fish and Wildlife Service, specifically the Geological Survey, issue the bands, they are numbered in sequence, and you get a new ring every year, and you have to follow that ring through the sequence, through start to end of that ring before you go to the next one. And of course, every bird that is banded, that data is recorded. The numbers recorded, the sex of the bird, where it was banded, all that pertinent information. So it's a way of managing. Those numbers kind of come up randomly, but it depends on basically what ring of bands and how they're numbered as you get them from the Fish and Wildlife Service. So it's actually pretty interesting. It really is. Even in ducks themselves, there's different band sizes. I mean, there's a big difference between a green-winged teal and let's say a black duck. They take two different bands. So it's a very, there's a lot of science behind it. It's really it's been a great contributor to what we know about all birds, raptors, songbirds. You know this, Jamie. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's how we know, like one example I always often use in education programs is, we know the oldest red-tailed hawk in the wild was, about 30 years old, and we know that because it was banded when the body was found. So,
Which is remarkable.
yeah, yes. Thank you for explaining that in detail. All right, next question. Is there anything being done to protect natural falcon nesting sites such as cliffs in Pennsylvania?
Well, the access to these cliffs is most often extremely difficult. So it's really not an issue. But when there has been issues or people getting too close, I know that in this state, of course, it would be the Game Commission would rope that area off. And there has been instances when they've done that. In another nest site, interestingly, not far from us, is in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. And down there, they were nesting particularly close to a hiking trail. And so they actually shut it down during the spring period when fledging, when the young arrive and the fledging is going to take place. So I think that states are responsible about access to it. And in cases of like the Rachel Carson building, you're not going to be able to get into that room. I have the key. You don't have the key. So that's how that works.
I was looking at that picture of you in that body harness, and I have to ask you, when you first were doing that, were you pretty terrified? Like, did it take some getting? Were you always a climber?
Well, first of all, we're giving some pretty extensive training. So that gives you a little bit of confidence. The system was new when I got to DEP. We redid everything and improved the safety markedly, I should say. And I also, I was in the service as a young man and had rappelled off of 3-story towers and stuff. So that sort of gave me a leg up on that kind of thing. So once you get up there and you're secure, it's actually remarkably wide ledge. It really takes some doing to fall off. But if you got bumped by one of the adults and lost your balance, I could see that happen. But that safety harness, it works. Hopefully I don't have to test it, but I know in practice it works.
Wow, amazing. And one last question, and we'll see if any others pop up. You mentioned there's opportunities to volunteer to be Peregrine Falcon fledgling search and rescue. That sounds
Absolutely.
awesome. Do you mind sharing with the audience, if they are interested in being involved, how can they go about making it happen? How do they sign up or apply?
I left this last slide up as my email on it. Feel free to email me directly, and I will put you in contact with Sue Hannon, who is our current search and rescue volunteer. She's been doing it for 20 years, and a remarkable group of birders and falcon fanciers. So if you are a bird watcher or wildlife watcher, or would like to get a little more of an inside look at the falcons here in Harrisburg, it's a great opportunity. I will be upfront. It can be long periods of no activity followed by incredible terror. When you see the bird take off in its first flight and it doesn't look very good, you're like, oh no.
Not on
But
my watch. Oh my.
yeah, and if we would, do a rescue, you'd get ringside seat to that. But it is the type of thing that the more people we have, the better it works, because sometimes they can take off pretty fast and get behind buildings, and you have to disperse. And so you see people with nets and binoculars scattering to the three winds of the Capitol complex, because we don't want to lose sight of these birds. And we have, and then you find them again, but it's your heart's in your throat. Where did they go? Did they fall? And usually you find them in some sort of silly perch, and you're like, well, that's not going to last. And we set up there. We watch them from that perch, and sometimes we put them to bed at night, and they're still in that same place. And next morning, daybreak, Sue and some of the other hardcore fanatics, they'll get out there and they'll resume watching. But those opportunities exist. Please, we'd love to have you. All you really need is a pair of binoculars, a chair, some sunscreen, a hat maybe. If you don't have binoculars, contact me. I can come up with a pair, and we'd love to have you join a great group of people. And you get to see the Falcon mural in downtown Harrisburg. Yeah, there's your added bonus.
Sounds like a lot of perks to me.
Yeah.
Well, we had a few more questions come in.
Okay.
Steve, he just accepted a position as researcher in southeastern PA for Hawk Mountain's Broadwing Hawk Project. Thank you. And he says, do you have any advice or tips for field research as he's going to be doing this? And are there any opportunities to witness the banding of peregrine falcons in person?
Let me answer the second part of that question first. In the past, DEP did open up a small group from the public to see live the banding, and that was usually a classroom or some, let's say, envirothon teams, something of that type. Maybe a student environmental club, something like that, and their teachers. Since COVID hit, we've been restricted on what we've been able to do in our building. But I hope that in the near future, we'll be able to invite some more students back in. It's kind of tough to get, the public in there. That's why we broadcast it, and we'll put it out on YouTube as well. And then the first part of that question was the tips for in the field. Well, one of them, I think all birders know. Usually first thing in the morning and when it's getting dark, that's when you're going to see your most activity. And so sometimes you're talking about getting up pretty early. Another thing that's come in handy in my career, and I'm not talking about spending $2,000 on German optics, but the best optics you can afford makes a big difference. I've had the same pair of binoculars now for a long time. I won't say the brands because I don't want to think like I'm plugging something, but you get the right quality and level. I've had some issues with them because they're old, and I can send them back to factory. They refurbish them and they send them back. And then the other thing that's good too is having a field guide. You never know what you might encounter besides your target species. We were setting up areas to band ducks at Middle Creek one time in the spring. We were looking at different ponds around the property that we thought might be a good place to catch wood ducks. And that's when we noticed red-headed woodpeckers nesting at Middle Creek. And that was the first documented nesting of that species at Middle Creek ever. And it was just because we were in the field, it was early in the morning, and we happened to hear that call. And both of us sort of stood upright like, hey, I think I know that. But
Oh,
yeah, that early to bed, early to rise, that helps a lot. Good optics help, and a field guide that that you don't have to page after page after page. You can just go to that section, or um, I also have small notebooks I take with me too that are easy to get. You can get them where they are waterproof, so you can write your notes down and you won't lose them.
awesome. That's great advice. And I was just thinking, I'd like to add a little shameless plug for that question about banding, being able to witness banding. Hawk Mountain, we offer two um, Raptor field techniques courses, and you do not need any experience. It's open to the general public. We have one this year in June and one in November, and we do go over banding of Raptors. And it's very limited. It's a very small amount of people, and they sell out quickly. Registration just opened today. So if you're watching this, you got a hot tip right there. So that's an interesting opportunity. And Bert, Steve is saying thank you so much for the advice for the field tips. And the
Sure.
last question, and I certainly don't know the answer to this, Bert. Falconers are there in Pennsylvania?
How many what?
Falconers?
Falconers? That I wouldn't know. Okay, I can tell you it's a limited number. The process to become a licensed falconer is difficult, and in my view, as it should be. So there is a very um, detailed, long process, including an apprenticeship, that is required by the Game Commission to get that falconer's license. So it is a process that takes a couple of years. And the amount of people that actually complete that training and actually are in the field falconers, it's pretty few and far between. Not that I have anything against it. It's just that I think that when you're handling raptors, you should have sufficient training to know what you're doing.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah,
Did have one more question.
sure.
And at our North Lookout at Hawk Mountain, we have a
Hmm.
great horned owl, and it's people ask, why do you have that there? And it's a lure to lure in the birds, the diurnal raptors that want to attack enemies. So the question is, do great horned owls bother the falcons in Harrisburg?
No, they do not. Um, we have in my experience, it's been almost 5 years now since I came to DEP from the Game Commission, and at no time have I seen an attempted predation on the adults. Now, once we had some crows that tried to get into the nest, and they picked the fight with the wrong peregrine falcons, because 48AE is a fierce and protective mother, and she was not going to have any of it. And those crows quickly realized that either A, they leave, or B, they're going to end up being dinner, to be frank. But they are raptors. Peregrine falcons, they eat birds.
Well, thank you. And we know we're talking about, predators. Another question, are there
Hmm.
known predators of peregrine falcons?
Are there known predators in Harrisburg or in general?
The question is just in general, what are
Yeah, in
they?
general, the owls tend to be, well, the great horned owl, many people refer to as the tiger of the forest. I'm sure many of the listeners have heard that. They are fierce. They'll eat anything, including barn owls. I've seen it in the field, and they're the primary predator. But some of the larger raptors, they have taken falcons. You might find it on YouTube. A couple of years ago, let's reverse the roles a little bit. There's a video taken down in Ocean City, Maryland, I believe, of a snowy owl on the beach getting buzzed by peregrine falcons. So sometimes the shoe's on the other foot.
Wow, you got to watch your back if you're a wild raptor, right?
Yeah, you do. It's a harsh world out there, and that's one of the things that's challenging and a little scary is that let's say we have 4 eggs that hatch. Of the iases, the last one hatched tends to be the weakest, and these birds of prey, they don't evenly distribute prey to each of the chicks. They do not. From the very beginning, the strongest and the fittest are able to outcompete the others and get the food. And that is how nature does it, to make sure that uh, at least one, but most of the four will survive. And my experience is that happened last year, for example, is that the 3 of the 4 survived, and the last one, it's not able to compete. It's a harsh lesson, but I think it's an important lesson because, be frank, that's how it works. But it's been effective. I mean, peregrine falcons have been on this planet, and they're one of the most widely distributed species on the planet. I've heard it said that only rock doves are more cosmopolitan than the peregrine falcon. The only place they're not found is where there's ice in the desert. Other than that, they're around.
Well, good for them. They're effective. They're good survivors. So
Yep.
wonderful, wonderful. Well, Bert, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge and expertise. It's been fascinating, truly. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Yay. And just so everyone knows, we're doing another collaborative virtual program with Hawk Mountain and Bert in June. And this is for a Wild About Raptors Educator Workshop Series, which is free. And teachers can get their Act 48 hours, which that's a bonus. And I don't have the dates memorized, but it's kind of the beginning to middle through of June, I believe. So
right.
Stay tuned for that, and there'll be more information about that and on Hawk Mountain's website.
And Shavers Creek will be helping us again this year, so we'll have 3 sessions, and they do a lot of great work with raptors as well.
Yes, they do. Thank you for adding that. Yes.
Yeah.
So join us for that. And I just want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing time with us. And thank you for your interest in peregrines and raptors in general. Thank you so much. As always, I like to encourage people, come visit us at Hawk Mountain. We are just weeks away, a few short weeks away from spring migration, which our count starts on April 1st. We always have a lot going on. We're still in our Winter Artisan Series. So every weekend we have new Pennsylvania artists coming in, teaching really unique workshops and artisan skills. And these programs support raptor conservation. So we have our Winter Artisan Series. This weekend we have fox canvas painting on Saturday, candle making the following Saturday, and feather painting on March 26th. And then on March 27th, we have a dream catcher workshop. We have homeschool happenings, Rock the House, all about geology, coming up on March 16th. And you know that March is Women's History Month. So we have a free on-site program. It's a Lenape Women History Program, Native America's Better Half, Strong Women's, Strong Nations. So that's going to be an amazing program. We have another stay-at-home speaker series on March 24th, The Real James Bond, which is a book, and the speaker is the author. We have Yoga on the Mountain, the last Sunday of every month, so that's the 27th. And then we also have the Women of Hawk Mountain panel, and that's a virtual program also celebrating Women's History Month, and that is on March 29th. And that's it for now. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day or evening, depending on where you're located. Bye for now.
Good night.